recently, and to Lady Gaga as well, giving the presentation and commercial, is health and wellness, especially in response to COVID. And I'll stop there as my intro. Go ahead, Kirsten.
Great, thanks, Isaac. It's great to meet you all. So I'm Kirsten Melling, a senior consultant actually out of Chicago. So less familiar with the Pittsburgh community, but I am from Cleveland originally. So you have me Midwest through and through. So my background is more on the sustainability side of things. So looking at environmental factors as well as health and well-being factors across a variety of scales, particularly for this interest here, but looking at it within the context of our built environment and our buildings. So excited to talk to you guys today about the WELL Health and Safety Rating, as well as kind of some broader health and wellness trends that we're seeing within the building space.
Thanks, Kirsten. And big rivalry between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, obviously.
I know, I was like, that might hurt me by saying that, but hopefully it's not.
I mean, Cleveland hasn't won anything in a really long time, so it's
okay. We'll follow up offline. So.
Okay, cool. Let's get started. So Kirsten and I were thinking about a couple of different ways of how we wanted to approach today. So I think in 3 buckets is the best way to describe it. And that's really an understanding of the importance of health and wellness in safety in a building, kind of more holistically, trends and why we kind of have arrived at where we are today with the focus of health and safety. And then kind of taking a little bit of a deeper dive into the actual WELL Health and Safety, the features and the recommendations, and kind of how to get the certification if that's something you'd like to pursue. And then talk a little bit more about the broader context of health and wellness and strategies that we see in WELL building certification, which is kind of the umbrella to the WELL Health and Safety rating. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but those are the 3 buckets that we want to hit today. Okay, so let's jump into kind of the evolution of how we see kind of these 2 buckets and how they've kind of intersected at this point in time. So I think over the last 5 decades or even longer, we've really seen 2 kind of focuses come out of the building space, one being this green building, the other being kind of this health and wellness. So for a long time in the green building space, it's been focused on the triple bottom line, how am I saving money on my energy, improving my building systems through efficiency. It's been shifting more recently into thinking about renewable energy, electrification, more recently, and thinking about carbon. And then probably, especially this last year with COVID, we've seen a lot of green building frameworks introduce and think about people at the intersection. And at the same time as this green building movement has been taking place, there's also been a kind of a wellness movement been taking place, really a little bit outside of the building space. We've seen it in the food wellness. We've seen it move into active design through architecture, biophilic design, and introducing nature and incorporating elements of the outside in your building design. Materials being a topic that's come up more recently, and how the indoor air quality space is providing kind of the health for our people. And then we see kind of all of these intersections being kind of the focus around people. So that's kind of how we see the trends and how these 2 kind of building movements have come together at this point. And just to give a little bit of validity to kind of what we're talking about today, we just pulled a couple of quotes really talking about how this wellness is going, if not is already the next trillion-dollar industry. We're seeing this outside of the building space with just a focus on health and wellness and active and tracking our steps and all of these things. And we're really seeing it introduced into our building spaces now. And then the next slide, just saying that, this is really the #1 focus for transforming our buildings in this really fast-paced environment with all of these certifications and frameworks. The focus really for all of them at this point is really around people and health. You're on mute, Kirsten.
You'd think I would have learned that by now. So the other thing we wanted to talk through is just, as Isaac is saying, how this is such a focus and a trend in the current moment, and I think we all are aware of this. We wanted to pull some facts and some stats together to really showcase the impact of the indoor environment and also, the benefits and potential value that we can achieve by making these healthier, better spaces. So I'm always shocked to see that we spend 90% of our time indoors. I think that just goes to show what an impact our indoor spaces can have on our health. And also, we spend 6 to 8 hours on average in the United States sitting per day, which I don't know about all of you, but I probably spend more time sitting than that, unfortunately. So the rest of the stats that are on this slide are really just trying to showcase how things like improving daylight, improving air quality or water quality can really correlate with some human benefits, such as reducing mortality or reducing depression or increasing productivity or creativity within the workplace. Or just increasing an overall sense of well-being. So that kind of just shows you on the slide between, daylighting, between air quality, water quality, and even access to nature, how you can have these benefits. And those are benefits that, yes, they directly translate to the tenant, but can then be realized by, the owner of that building or incentivize the developer to incorporate those features. So in talking about those stakeholder groups, we wanted to show this diagram of what's the different value. We know we're talking to a lot of different audience members today and just wanted to kind of speak through the value of the benefit for each of these individual groups. Starting with the developer on the left, could they potentially dictate a higher sales price for incorporating these features or realize quicker sales or potentially just have an overall increase in market value? On the owner side, could they increase their occupancy rates or slower that depreciation, reduce operating costs, which I know is also something as a benefit that we tend to tie with green buildings. And then, of course, on the tenant side, it's really a lot of the things that I was saying on the previous slide. It's that overall increase in health and well-being, that increase in productivity, and being able to attract into commercial facilities some better tenants or tenants that are really focused on providing those differentiated workspaces for their staff, which we know with the times that we're living in now, with COVID and many people continuing to work from home, that being able to have a differentiated workplace is really going to be key to getting people back in buildings. So we'll be talking a lot about WELL today and the frameworks that the Wellbeing Institute provides, but there's a lot of industry groups out there that are sort of leading the way in terms of green building design and well building design. And we wanted to just kind of showcase the different groups that are up here. Specifically with the health and safety rating that we're talking through today, we're really focused on a response to COVID. And a lot of the groups that are up here have posted their own response. They're kind of giving different guidance, like LEED has some safety first credits that they're incorporating into their frameworks that are trying to increase the safety within indoor environments. You've got ASHRAE that's produced a healthy buildings resources guide giving really specific technical recommendations. But one of the only real rating systems that we're seeing is from the WELL side of things. And that's what Isaac's going to be talking through today to kind of talk us through what those recommendations are at a high level, because you can use those whether or not you pursue the framework or not. So with that, I'll hand it over to Isaac.
Thanks. I think we've all been wrestling with this idea of how do we reopen buildings safely? How do we get back to work? What does the future of work even look like? I think we as Borough Hatfield and a lot of people that I've talked with have all landed on, we're all going to get back to work at some level. And while that might look different than what our old normal was, where we're all in the office all the time, there's still going to be an office. There's still going to be a place that we go to. And there's still going to be a need for feeling comfortable as an occupant and confident that I'm going to a healthy building. And as an owner and developer, as Kristen mentioned, there's a lot at stake and there's a lot to benefit. It's not just about the occupant feeling comfortable and healthy, but it's also, there's a lot of benefits that go hand in hand with Class A offices, higher value for your rented space. And really, you want to provide that kind of confidence as a developer and owner to your occupants that they are in fact in a healthy building, and you're doing everything you can to prevent, whether it's COVID or anything else that we see as a kind of a concern for health and safety. So with that, health or the well building standard has recently, as of 2020, released a health and safety rating. So as you see, there's been a little bit of a development over the last few years about well building certification. It's relatively newer in the sense of the other frameworks that Kirsten mentioned. We've seen LEED around for a long time, but the well building standard, really launched in 2014, and we've seen a couple iterations since then with the well community standard, and more recently the well version 2 pilot, which has actually been adopted as well version 2, and more recently in 2020 this health and safety seal that has been specifically focused on disease prevention and health and safety. What does the development of actually well look like? Because we want to be confident that we are doing things that are in response to COVID and really safety measures in general. So what's nice is that this has really been, the well framework's been built on a lot of science-based research, right? They're also part of the IWBI, which is the Green Building Certification for LEED. So that there's this third-party backing to all of this. And we've seen it reused a number of COVID response scientists. CDC research is backing a lot of the recommendations throughout the health and safety rating. So we know that these are kind of the most relevant and up-to-date information backed by the scientific community. So in terms of well being holistic, I mentioned earlier, the focus is really on people. So we have our behaviors of those people and really the behaviors that we see within the building. We see the design. If we're thinking about a new construction building, there's a lot that goes into that, from the materials side, people flow, access to daylight. But on the existing building side, there's a lot of still design decisions to be made. And then the third pillar being kind of the operations. How are we thinking about mechanical systems and electric systems and water systems that are really benefiting the occupants and the people. I mentioned this earlier, but GBCI and IWBI are housed under this third-party rating system, so we can feel confident. We've been using LEED for a long time. This is really the same system backing well building certification. And I mentioned this is really a movement to meet our time. It kind of spun really a little bit before COVID was becoming a thing, but it really took hold during COVID-19's kind of resurgence in how we're thinking about our buildings. So the well building standard, even prior to, is really informing health and safety in our facility and operations management, and really, most valuable asset being the people themselves. We know that this is being taken up by the industry and market, which is one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you today. I was talking to Amanda, and we've seen, Lady Gaga's commercials. We've seen this really strong push branding and marketing campaign, and we've already seen it. A number of industries, building sectors take up this well health and safety rating seal already, with over 8,100 buildings already certified, 729 million square feet being kind of well health and safety rated already. And really this kind of begs the question, or really moving forward, how do we reopen with confidence? So the health and safety rating really provides this knowledge for the building owner that we can reopen with confidence, whether that's introducing some flexibility with how we organize our spaces and goals and strategies within. We know that it's verified through a third-party rating system, and it's backed by science. We know that we can apply this down to the mom and pop, Wing Hearts, or one of the old Froggies bar down in Pittsburgh, to our large, U.S. steel buildings. The scale of this rating system really applies to all buildings in all different sectors, and it's really accessible. It's relatively cheap in terms of a certification framework, and therefore is really achievable for buildings at a variety of scales. So really, how does it work? How does the health and safety rating work? It's based on a few different pillars of sorts. It's like, and it's really based around this idea of disease prevention and mitigation. So we have keeping spaces clean and sanitized. We have providing essential health benefits and services and sick leave and resources for your occupants. We have communication of health and safety efforts. I think we often see that while a lot of building owners and facilities are doing really great things in response to COVID and other safety related things, they're not being adequately communicated to all of the patrons and occupants, which as an occupant, you want to know that you are in a healthy building. And it's really helping to prepare for what's next. I think we've all, at this point, we're starting hopefully to get back to some semblance of normal. We're responding to COVID, we're reopening buildings, but we know this is not going to be a one-time occurrence. There's other health and safety emergency preparedness plans that we need to have in place. And then that kind of fifth pillar being assessing our air and water quality, which we know is having a huge and very direct impact on our occupants. Okay, so this is, we're going to dive in a little bit to the actual strategies and features within the WELL Health and Safety Rating. So these are kind of the 5 buckets. Within the actual framework itself, there's 22 individual features, and you have to achieve 15 of them. So you have a little bit of flexibility, as I was mentioning, as to what you want to pursue, what strategies and what features. And those look like cleaning and sanitation procedures with 5 different features and strategies, emergency preparedness programs, thinking about other things outside of even COVID, health and service resources, those are your providing sick leaves and really your other resources that you're providing back to your employees. Again, the air and water quality management being really important as a pillar. And then really just the stakeholder engagement and communication of all of this information and all of these efforts that we as building owners are taking on. Okay, so let's dive in. We have cleaning and sanitation being our first pillar, and that's really this idea of supporting hand washing. Obviously, we've heard for a long time about the importance of washing hands and how to wash hands. I think we've all learned how we need to wash hands now, being different than maybe how we have in the past. But this feature dives in a little bit more and actually marries with air quality standards as well, thinking about how we're providing fragrance-free liquid hand soap, and we're providing paper towels where we can limit some of the contact of hands. Or if we do have air dryers, they have HEPA filters on them. So those are like the features that you would have to implement in your building. The next one being reduced surface contact. And I should mention that as I go through some of these, it's usually like an either or you have to do one of the following, and I'll do my best to mention that. But for reducing surface contacts, it would be, you're doing all of the following, which include an inventory of all of your high-touch surfaces, the doorknobs, the telephones, elevators, all of those things, and inventorying all your person-to-person contact points, whether that's security or other points where there's a handoff. And then really potentially or temporarily implementing procedures that eliminate people touching things. So this could be, automated doors, or this could be, something that you use your foot to open with, or a voice-activated elevator. We're seeing this a lot being implemented technology-wise in new construction and a lot of our renovation works throughout. So this one provides flexibility, whether you can do it temporarily or a permanent fixture. Improved cleaning practices, and we've all heard of Green Seal and green cleaning practices. They're really important because not only for response germs and disease prevention, but there's actually a huge air quality implication to all of this. So this in particular, this feature is really talking about how you're thinking about your practices. So this is having a policy in place, identifying your frequency of cleaning, how cleaning supplies are being accessed, where the information lies for these cleaning supplies, identifying all of the surfaces, putting together schedules and so forth. Whereas the next feature is really thinking about the actual products that you're using, and what you need to do for this product or this feature is really select and purchase specific cleaning products that are labeled either eco-label. There's a number of certified green cleaning products that you can have. A lot of times we think we're using green cleaning products, or you're marketed something that's green cleaning, but unless it's actually certified under eco-label and through a third-party certification organization, it's actually not a preferred cleaning product. And that's the case in a lot of different frameworks, not just well, health and safety. And then the last one being to reduce respiratory particle exposure. And we're doing a lot of this already. This is really about like our queuing distances while we're waiting in line, how we're accessing the elevator, how we're thinking about moving around our buildings and people flow, like whether it's like one directional or having two separate doors for entry and exit. So all of those strategies would cycle up to then having this feature. Okay, so the next feature is really around emergency, and this one is more so than just COVID. It's really our response to any sort of resiliency effort and emergency preparedness, whether we're thinking about natural disasters or human-created incidences or response to disease. It's preparing our building for a response to those plans. So you'll see throughout these, as an example of the first feature, it's really about a preparedness plan. So identifying what are the possible risks, what are the possible, evaluating the exit points and so forth, whether that's for a natural disaster, a fire, a health concern, a human caused concern. And then we're meeting the communication efforts around those with making sure that we have regulatory practice drills, or we have that information provided to all of our occupants. We're creating a business contingency plan. I think a lot of us have done this throughout the work from home and COVID. Like, what are our core business functions, processing, people-wise, technology-wise, and putting that into a plan and really a cost-benefit assessment. So who are the employees and positions that can work from home? What's the necessary infrastructure for putting those people in place and working comfortably? How are we evaluating our organizational technology and then implementing strategies? Again, this is a plan, just like the last strategy. So this is verified by like a professional narrative or a policy that you would put in place. A plan for healthy reentry. This is obviously something we're all thinking about at this point. Again, it's a plan. It's kind of building off of those other preparedness plans and thinking about roles and responsibilities, reevaluation of entry points, policies, about bringing people back into space, security measures, so forth, PPE, and then also what's the contingency planning for a reclosing, right? If we start all of this reopening for whatever it is, and then all of a sudden we have to adapt for a different scenario, we want to have a plan that looks at reclosing, in fact. And then just the frequency of communication. What is kind of built into all these features is how we're communicating these back to the occupants. Providing emergency resources. This is what you would think of, around first aid kits, AEDs, coordinating emergency response terms and plans to all of your employees. And then the last being bolstering emergency resilience. And this is really thinking about at the time of an emergency response and then thereafter. So that might look like providing space for emergency responders or relief organizations on site as at least one of the following, that being one. The second being, shelter in place option with like a shelter in place kit that you can provide in case there is a time where employees or occupants have to stay on site. Or there's like an emergency employee assistance fund where you can provide fees or scenarios back to in the case of an emergency. Okay, so I'm going to try to go a little bit faster. So we have health service resources, and this looks at, for the first one, looking at providing really sick leave, right? And you have to do both of these for this credit. It would be providing a short-term sick leave, so at least 10 days of sick leave paid at 50% or higher to employees, or 20 days as a combined effort, and then a semblance of providing long-term sick leave at 12 weeks of sick leave. It doesn't necessarily have to be fully paid though. Then we have providing health benefits. That's what you would imagine. This is thinking about sort of plans for your employee, but also their dependents and families at either a no cost or a subsidized cost, and then some sort of consultation that they can have as part of their plans. Then we have supporting mental health recovery. This is really thinking about, other than the physical, we've learned through COVID and really any of these emergency responses, there's a huge mental toll that displays on a lot of your employees. So thinking about how we can support them through either crisis counseling, there's something called physiological or psychological first aid training, which is similar to first aid training, how we think of it, but also this is focused on the mental health components. There's bereavement counseling, or at the simplest, providing information on benefits and coverage. Then you have promoting flu vaccines. That is pretty straightforward. This is, whether it's on-site or providing your employees with information or a voucher / coverage for getting their flu vaccine. And then the last is promoting a smoke-free environment. We're seeing this on pretty much every certification at this point, whether that be LEED, WELL, living building, or any of those. Okay, so the one that we probably often think of the most as building managers, facility managers, owners is the air and water quality management. And that's really thinking about, we're assessing our ventilation at first. And for this feature, you would have a qualified engineer that be already on site, or you hire as part of this process through the health and safety. And they're going to look and provide a professional narrative of their assessment on, what's the highest rate of outdoor air that the current system can provide? What are the potential modifications that you can increase your supply of outdoor air through changing set points? And then, what are the impacts on energy, the ability to manage thermal comfort, and then sort of the impacts of maintenance and processes if we are to change our ventilation. The next one being assess and maintain air treatment systems. And this is, again, doing an inventory. So you need to have an inventory in place of all of your ducts, your fans, any standalone equipment that's treating the air, and then follow up with an assessment that looks at filtration and MERV and UV equipment, and considers whether these are things you can install, and then how often you need to maintain this equipment. The third being pretty straightforward, developing a Legionella plan, looking at management within the building, identifying those key systems, whether that's the water system, the process flow, cooling towers, and so forth, and then detailing a plan of communicating that back to upper management and also to the employees. Monitoring air and water quality, that's also straightforward. This is a once-a-year thing. So in order to meet this feature, you'd have to monitor your air and water on an annual basis. You can hire someone to do this, or you could have a kind of a monitoring approach in occupied spaces, and that's PM 2.5, PM 10, ozone, VOCs, carbon monoxide, the things you would think of. And the same goes for water on an annual basis for pH and turbidity and so forth. And the last one being managing mold and moisture. And this is thinking about both from a process of how we're capturing and communicating and logging all of those moisture problems, but also how we're fixing and addressing those. And this is in the way of a plan, but also an actual implementation guide. So the last bucket is the stakeholder engagement. And this is really connecting your employees and your occupants back to the mission of what you're doing by going through this health and safety rating, or any bespoke system for that matter, by reopening your building. you're providing the health and safety guidance back to your employees, and that has to either be on a quarterly basis for occupants. And then you're sharing food inspection information. This is publicly available reports that the health inspector would provide to the building owners, just making that kind of transparent to your building occupants. The last bucket is really innovation. So there's a number of credits. You can go ahead and zoom through this, Kirsten. There's 1, 2, and 3, which essentially says, are you pursuing any of the additional well building certification measures? Do you have a well AP on board? There's a couple other innovation credits that allows you to be flexible in how you do this. Or are you LEED certified? That's another way to get an innovation point. Sorry, that was a lot, and I talked fast. But we're seeing this as going across brands, right? And this is to the point earlier, like all of the branding around this is moving forward, and we're seeing some pretty high-profile companies take this charge. Now I'm going to stop talking because we're going to show Lady Gaga and some other people talk about how this is important.
All right, Isaac, I'm going to play. Just let me know if you don't hear audio.
If you want to get back to your favorite places and feel confident they have put your health and safety first,
look for the Well Health Safety Seal.
Look for the Well Health Safety Seal.
Look for the Well Health Safety Seal.
I'm Dr. Richard Carmona, the 17th Surgeon General of the United States of America. This is the Well Health Safety Seal from the International Well Building Institute, the global authority on healthy buildings.
The Well Health Safety Rating was informed by years of research and input from hundreds of leading virologists, public health experts, epidemiologists, and building professionals around the world.
You'll see it at schools, offices, banks, childcare centers, all the places we go.
The Well Health Safety Seal means that we'll feel better going into restaurants,
theaters, stores, hotels,
stadiums, and all the places that we love.
Everything may look the same, but the Well Health Safety Seal means that your health and safety are top of mind when it comes to
cleaning and sanitizing procedures,
air and water quality management,
emergency preparedness programs,
and health services.
So look for the Well Health Safety Seal outside
and feel more confident going inside. Learn more about the Well Health Safety Rating at wellhealthsafety.com.
If you want to get back to your favorite.
Hi, sorry that was a little choppy, but I think we got the gist. We often laugh, Kirsten and I, because they obviously spent a gazillion dollars in promoting the well health and safety. But what I have heard is a lot of the celebrities that they got and people who are in the scientific community are actually, whether they got paid or not, are actually in high support of the features and the reopening strategies that are produced out of the WELL's health and safety rating. I'm going to just zoom through these slides so Kirsten can talk a little bit about what other recommendations might look like. But we have just the process. It's pretty straightforward of enrolling through review and then a little bit of a renewal phase. And then we have required documentation. You might be wondering, as I went through those features, how they actually are checking that you're doing these things. And it's really through policy documents, photographs, professional narratives, owner kind of sign-offs via letters of assurance, or there's really just general documents that you can provide additional coverage. And then lastly being whose kind of roles and responsibilities. And we see this, the project admin, which can either be the owner or someone on site that you might hire. And then there's obviously the actual owner who does the sign off of documentation. And then if you'd like to hire a well-accredited professional, they kind of help walk you through all of this because they know it, right? And I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kirsten.
Great. Okay, so I will go through, really the priority thing that we wanted to focus on today was that well health and safety rating, but we did want to leave you just with some broader health and wellness components as a part of the Well V2 framework. So we'll flash those up on screen here. So Well V2, as Isaac previously mentioned, is the pilot framework that WELL most recently adopted for broader health and well-being in our indoor environments. So the health and safety rating is a rating system that you can come and have your facility evaluated. And the WELL V2 framework is that broader framework where you get a score, silver, gold, or platinum. So these are the concepts within the framework. There are 10. I did want to call out just these ones highlighted in this green box in particular, because they're the most distinct from the concepts that we went over within the health and safety rating. So I'll just kind of breeze through these quickly because we do want to leave about 15 minutes for questions with all of you. So the first set, nourishment, daylight, and movement. So these are just additional features. And as you can kind of see when we're describing them, like some of these have operational impacts, some of them might have design impacts. There's kind of different areas depending on where you are with either a project or owning a facility where these can or cannot be embedded. So on the nourishment side, it's really about promoting health and well-being through your food choices. So that's having healthy foods on site, fresh fruits and vegetables. It can be around procurement from local or organic providers. It can be about having special diets, having that accessible for all the people within the building. And also just having general promotional material around healthy choices or providing healthy portions, etc. On the daylight side, I think we all know that maybe we'll do a little better with some access to sun. At least I feel that way right now, and basically it's still winter time, but it's focused on light exposure. And so how having, more windows or having your window treatments removed so you can let more light in, or making sure that you have treatments in place to be able to control glare throughout the day. There's different things that you can do to achieve the different aspects of this component. For movement, as I mentioned earlier, we sit 6 to 8 hours a day on average. So trying to incorporate more active design, whether there's a natural flow to the way things are oriented within the building, to having active workstations or ergonomic design within your workstations so that you're promoting health and well-being from a movement perspective. And of course, doing any other promotion of activity, that's always one you're going to see pretty quickly, like just having something as simple as signage of, hey, remember to take the stairs. That can be a really quick fix or a quick item that you can do that can really encourage wellness. So then our next set of categories, so thermal comfort, being comfortable within our indoor environments obviously can greatly impact how we feel about them. So this can be down to simple things such as having operable windows or being able to give thermal comfort control. So being able to change a thermostat or have influence within a space, as well as offering a variety of zones that might have different degrees, literally different degrees of temperature to accommodate different people's preferences. Sound actually tends to fall along the same lines. We don't always think about, background noise, but I think once we experience it, we certainly notice it. Whether you're in a building like I am now where the windows aren't that great, so I can hear that street noise really clearly, to being able to hear the mechanical systems, people have different preferences, and it's important to give a variety of acoustical zones. So some people might like more background noise while others really need a silent environment. And it's important to create those different types of spaces with different mechanisms available. And then last on this page, so one that continues to rise is really materials. We all are aware that we want to restrict hazardous materials that may contain lead or other hazardous chemicals or things on site. That's, of course, a basic, but there's even more to consider with volatile organic compounds, and that's VOCs. So what we really want to do is limit the use of these within our products, such as the furnishings we use, the carpets, the paints, because these chemicals get into the air and greatly influence air quality and can cause headaches, fatigue, etc. Other concepts within, materials would be things like waste management and making sure that we're providing alternative waste streams, having responsible pest and cleaning policy, which on the cleaning side certainly overlaps with that WELL health and safety rating. And we'll be able to answer questions. I do know I'm going through this quickly. So the last two, so mind and community. So mind, thinking about that mental health component again, and whether it's just promoting mental health education to providing restorative spaces where people feel calm or have a chance to recoup. We're definitely seeing that more and more as a trend of like specifically allocating space within a building. And then finally, community. So relating to kind of the stakeholder engagement side of things that Isaac was speaking to, how are we engaging occupants? How are we either educating them about health and well-being, health services, emergency preparedness, or just capturing their feedback so that we can continuously improve and provide, the features that are going to be most important for attracting and retaining them. So those are just some additional kind of wellness components that we can consider. Kind of want to wrap up with thinking about your path forward. So out of this, what are some of the things that you could think about that you might like to do? So the first step is really focusing on assessing your needs. Figure out, within my facility or my project, is there a priority around health and safety, or maybe wellness, or is there an environmental component? Do we need to talk about the intersection of well and green, like Isaac was speaking to before? So after kind of assessing your needs, you can evaluate frameworks. Maybe the well health and safety rating is right for you. Maybe lead safety first pilot credits are right for you. There's a variety of other things that you can explore to figure out, do I want to use one of these frameworks as a part of my journey to feel like I have a safe facility? And then finally, pursuing your strategy. So maybe you're going to select an industry framework like the one that we went through today, or maybe you'll have a bespoke path. We wanted to share these recommendations with all of you today because while we think that well health and safety rating is excellent and gives you kind of that seal of approval, which will help improve comfort within the building, it's also just provides those recommendations in general that you can take on. And maybe there's other factors that are important to you that you want to incorporate into that more tailored or bespoke path for your facility. Okay, and with that being said, we will leave you with this. We did at Bureau Happold's compile a Healthy Buildings Recommendations and Resources Guide across these categories here on the right that we thought were really pertinent within 2020. So many of these take kind of a COVID lens, but it also is thinking beyond COVID to just broader health and well-being strategies. So there's a lot of really specific recommendations, either from design or retrofit type of process. So we'll make sure to share that with Amanda, who can share it out so you guys have more resources there. And with that being said, I think I'm 1 minute over, so not too bad. But I just wanted to say thank you and then take the time for questions.
Thank you both. That was great. Does anyone that is on have any questions, or if you don't feel comfortable asking, feel free to put it in the chat and I can ask the group. I had a quick question because I was thinking, I saw some people that were on, if you have a multi-tenant property, for example, if you have a retail space, can you say the building itself, I saw the sick leave, because there's some things that you can't control in terms of if you, rent out, part of your space to a retail client. What does that look like in terms of a framework for getting that rating?
Yeah, as part of some of the guidance that I didn't share today, there's actually defining your boundary, right? And it has to do with the percentage of one tenant versus multiple tenants. You can carve out some spaces that you don't have necessarily control over. The idea being you want to cover your whole building, but to your point, there's some tenants that you can't control. But if you have one tenant that is 75% of the building, then you would have to then cover all of that space, obviously. So there's a couple of different nuances within it, but I think it's provided as a flexible kind of framework that you can define almost your own boundary.
Perfect. Any other questions from the group?
Yeah, Amanda, it's Shannon with Helmet. Isaac, nice to see you, your face there.
Hey, Shannon.
So can you just clarify again? So of the 22 points that you had listed out, how many do you need to qualify?
You need 15.
15, okay. And then is there a place that you can, without actually going through the whole enrollment process, that you can dive into each one of these categories in a bit more detail to see what rolls up into each one?
Yeah, in the short, it's on the well building framework. There's a subsection that you can go to health and safety. I'll send it to Amanda and maybe she can send it out.
Okay.
But it goes in specifically to what the requirements are, if you have to do this and this or this or this.
Okay, that would just be helpful to go, I think, a little deeper into it. And then do you think, obviously, you know, we've worked together when you were with the Green Building Alliance. Is this something that you would recommend that you get with a company? And obviously, I trust your opinion, even though you're with an engineering firm. Would you recommend getting with someone who is qualified and has the background, or is this something that you feel like individual property owners or managers can kind of tackle on their own?
Yeah, it really depends. I love the way you frame that. I'm still a trusted advisor.
Yes, I know. That's why I'm asked, because I know you'll give me a straight answer.
To Kirsten's point, it's really, if you want to do a bespoke framework, which you like pick and choose kind of the different things, then I don't know if you need someone to come in as like a well AP. But if you're going through the health and safety rating, there's a lot of policy documentation and planning that's helpful to have someone that has already done it, can pull in a template that you might already have. Not to mention, you also get additional points for having like a well AP person on staff as part of the innovation. And, you know, to the earlier point about some of the branding, personally, I feel that this is something that we're going to see picked up in the market. We're going to start to see the seals. We're going to start, as occupants kind of want to see that our building's doing something. So I do see this as kind of a service area that we'll see more and more companies, you know, hiring somebody to come in and look at their facility.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you. And I think it's going to be like, obviously, as a LEED certified building, it meant very little to the occupants because they didn't get it. But I think when they see these commercials and there's faces that they recognize, there's going to be more questions around like, well, what do you know about it? What are you doing about it?
Yeah, and the upfront cost to the certification is not super expensive. I think it's around $5,000. And then to do some of the testing and put together some of the policy documents and planning, that's where you would spend some more money, obviously, in terms of efforts and time and testing. But the actual framework cost itself is pretty low entry.
Thank you.
Yeah, Shannon, I would say that was actually kind of what your question was when Isaac and I connected. What we thought was important for this conversation is people are going to know about it. So we wanted to make sure that even if your property can't afford to do this or it's just not in the cards, there's plenty of things that just make sense to do and you can say that you're doing and you can kind of work towards it. So we felt it was a win-win to start this conversation for the people that are managing properties or providing services, because none of these things hurt the tenant, like they just help. So you can kind of slowly work your way, you know, towards it if you're not able to do it right away. And a lot of the things that I know that a lot of you are already doing, like I know you have an emergency response plan and different things. So we just kind of felt like, let's start this conversation as we were like, well, was really the people that did it right. They're pulling in these big celebrities. So people are going to understand what I feel like everyone else kind of thought, oh, like people will just like want to have it, but they're really using, I guess they're flexing their muscles to get, you know, the world to know about them. So then people want to do it at their properties.
I had a question for either Isaac or Kirsten. Do you know, one question is in Pittsburgh, do we know how many buildings in the general area are well certified or accredited so far?
That's a good question. I'm not actually familiar if there's any actually certified buildings. Angelica, I know you're on the line. Do you know of any?
Yes. Hi, I'm Angelica with Advantage Engineers, but Isaac and I used to work together at Green Building Alliance. Great presentation, guys. Also, this was wonderful. But to answer your question, yes. So FIPS, Center for Sustainable Landscapes, has a WELL certification, as well as Desmond Architects has one for their new offices. There are a number of projects who have registered for WELL, but have not actually pursued it, but used it as a framework. In terms of the actual WELL health safety rating, the only rated projects that I'm aware of are the 6 schools at Upper St. Clair, which achieved a rating about a month ago. So I'm assuming Phipps is probably right behind that, going to go for that rating as well. But I'm not sure if you guys know of any others. We're working with a property manager right now also who's pursuing it for their buildings, but I don't know, Isaac, if you know of any others, or Amanda, that are pursuing it here in Pittsburgh.
I just know one of our board members who they manage quite a few properties. It was like 20 plus. They're interested in looking at this. So again, I think that if you have that like marketing budget and you can do these things, I think you're going to start to see it because it is getting out there. And then for those on my board that didn't say they were directly pursuing it, I think they're interested in, like I said, working towards like the framework pieces behind it.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, we're seeing this a lot on all the new construction projects. Maybe the health and safety rating is really focused on existing buildings, but the WELL building framework has been coming up in just about every single new construction project. Whether they actually get certified or not is one thing, but the framework and kind of the strategies that are called out are being discussed early on in the process.
Any other questions?
I have a question actually, because it was great to also see, you know, the overview at the end about how this fits in with the bigger picture. And I'm curious to hear, you know, if you guys are working at all with the Fitwell version kind of this rating, and if that's something that you're seeing getting picked up, and also if you're, you know, kind of related frameworks with the LEED innovation, you know, safety first credits that are out there. I'm just curious of what you're hearing from your clients, what people are trying to pursue, because I know there's other options too.
Definitely. Isaac, I'm happy to take a first stab at this question. So, Angelica, good question. We definitely, so a few things there. One, WELL and Fitwell and all the other ratings frameworks. I would say Fitwell, in terms of what I've seen, so what we know, Fitwell tends to be a bit more approachable for a lot of people, a bit more achievable over WELL. WELL can sometimes be, there's like so many components to it. It's like very valuable, but can be a lot to pursue. So definitely see Fitwell as kind of that more approachable entry into this space. But in terms of projects, we see more WELL projects overall, if that makes sense. But that's just from like that lens of Bureau Happold. And then the other thing, so I've had a lot of clients very interested in both like the WELL side of things from a broader rating system, as well as these LEED safety first pilot credits. So I've got one project right now, it's going on in Detroit, for example, and they were pursuing LEED and WELL, started many years ago, decided to just go with the LEED certification. But now with this really big focus on health and well-being and concerns about COVID, they've been asking us a lot about these LEED safety first pilot credits, as well as what components of WELL maybe they should consider, even if they don't pursue the framework, to bring it back. So I have had that client and at least one or two others on the LEED safety first pilot credits that have been interested in just getting more education on it, and then pursuing those as innovation credits within their design submissions. And then the WELL side is for those projects is more on the broader WELL framework of like, okay, if we don't pursue this framework, what at a minimum do we at least need to consider and make sure is incorporated in our building? Kind of a blended approach between pursuing WELL certification and considering those factors from the health and safety rating. So does that help answer the question? Okay, great.
I would just add on one thing, being that I think the benefit of the WELL health and safety rating is it actually provides some visibility to what you're doing as a building owner. You might have the LEED certification and be pursuing some of those COVID response credits that LEED's introduced, but in many cases your occupants, employees don't know you're doing any of that. Whereas either it could be Fitwell in one case, or it could be, you know, WELL health and safety having an actual physical like seal and knowledge that you are in fact doing these kind of best practices.
And actually, you know, Isaac, you got me thinking, I would say that's a big benefit of that WELL health safety rating, because part of the challenge some of my clients have had in navigating the LEED safety first credits is for a lot of them are on new construction projects. So they're like, how does this fit into our story? Or we're not going to be able to, you know, do daily logs on management plans until post occupancy 2 or 3 years from now. So the well health and safety rating is very much the here and now, which I think is really valuable.
All right, well, I think that was like perfect timing that we wrapped up question wise. So thank you both. I think that was super informative. I will get the presentation from you both and make sure I have that right link. I know Angelica put in the chat too, but I will send that to everyone on the call and follow up with them. And like I said, this is being recorded and we'll put it on our website so people can reference back. But thank you guys both again for your time this morning and sharing the information.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, everyone,
Great.
for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Great to meet you all.